I saw in another media group an expose that the whole of Mathare slums has only 2 public schools. So that people have these mabatis like the one we saw in Dagoretti. It means the country has not been investing in consonance with the increment in our population.
Yes.
So what Bonnie is saying is a good idea, cannot be condemned entirely. I would not do it because I believe the schools need to have some form of privatization, at least in management, and that's how it happens world over. They must remain public, but the management must be privatized because we are simply too many to put all our hopes in a government which probably in the foreseeable future will be dysfunctional. Bonnie, let me just support you by telling you that I read somewhere that Masinde Muliro, a school in your village, has 3,000 employees who are not lecturers. It makes the school dysfunctional. It puts too much pressure on money so that students must keep paying even for services they don't need. And it's the C word, it's corruption. That is a school in your village. So I really want to agree with you. What I would like to see is a greater debate on which way with education. Is it, Dibal, that we can keep talking about devolution and keep education centralized?
Yes.
You know, how is it that a kid in Wajir is doing the same exam as a kid in Kisumu Boys? There's something amiss. We need to discuss it. And you know,
and you know, my brother, that's why I wanted to appeal to Amolo.
Yes.
My opinion was not meant to be the way forward. I opened by saying we need to start this national conversation. You know, it hurts me when I hear people say the children in private academies are children of the rich. This is far from the truth. The children who died in Dagoretti, in that makeshift private school, were not children of the rich. It's just that parents who are hungry for their children doing well are hungry to move them from public school and take them somewhere where they have got hope. Allow me to give you an example. There is a woman in Kakamega called Ruth Meneshe. She's the director of a school called First-Base Academy. This woman goes all out of her way to accommodate Mama Mboka's children and so on and so forth. They're the ones who you see doing very well. So when you tell us that the children at First-Base Academy are children of the rich, you are living a lie. I can even go further, but I don't want to give her name. I know of her Mama Mboga personally. Let me just call her Mama Resh. That's what we call her. Mama Resh has got 3 children. Through her Mama Mboga business, she's been able to push these children. Her firstborn child is doing law. I came across her last week when she was looking for a passport to go and look for a job in Dubai. And when I asked her, what are you doing? She said, my Mboga business cannot sustain my 3 children anymore. I want to go do a job in Dubai. I have somebody who has invited me so that I can support them. The government, by refusing to acknowledge that these people in private academies also need support, they are visiting the kind of frustration that you see me describing. We need to discuss this more.
But you see, Bondi,
Yeah.
that argument
Yeah.
betrays why it is not a good argument.
Okay.
When you see a Mama Mboga save all that she has to take her child to some private academy, then that demonstrates a failed system. And it is not to be encouraged by saying, now let the rest of the public schools be privatized or managed privately. It is to look at the reason why would a lady spend 80 or 90% of her earnings to educate a child? Why would we? You see, this is where we came from. I am told of a time when in Nairobi, you could open the taps and drink water from that tap.
True.
And that time came to pass. Now we've made peace with the fact that you can never drink it. Instead of looking at that, we are happy to bring plastic water at every meeting. Instead of looking at why did that happen? And that's why the Bal's question is good. What has happened is that over the years, there has been consistent neglect of public management. And it's all over, whether it's in water, whether it's in electricity. Instead of, looking at why it's not working, you say, okay, let's hire private electricity providers, most of whom just take money from us for no reason. My point is not to deny that that is the reality. But my point is to say we go the privatization way, it's to make peace with the fact that we have failed and we will always fail. In my view, we must start working backwards. Where did the rain start beating us, and see how much we can recover? Because if we are going this way, let me tell you, this country will only belong to a certain number of people. All of us here went to private schools. We then went to public universities. Even at that time, there were people who were going to very prestigious private schools in primary, in secondary, private universities abroad. It does not mean they're any better than any of us. We must make public institutions work, because that is the idea of government. That's my whole point.
Just a moment.
On this very important
Let's hear from
point.
Eseli. We'll come to you, Komatangi.
That's why government collects our taxes to give us services. That solution you are giving, while I agree it's a possible solution, but it's a lazy solution. That means that we have refused to tackle our problem. Now we are handing it to private people to handle it. And then when we try to fund them from the national coffers, we are encouraging the same corruption now. You see, like, the reason why the country is suffering is, usually in a country where the middle class is strong, such things would not be allowed to happen. The middle class would come out and put a stop to it. But why it's happening in Kenya is because half of the middle class caught there corruptly. So they're not willing to stop anything like corruption. And that's when you talk about privatizing education, that's where we are heading.
I agree with you.
I think Bonnie, you can hold your point a little bit, because I wanted to say exactly what, or follow up on what Otende Amolo was saying. And I think that there should be solutions that are feasible, if you ask me. Because, for example, in entrenching devolution, one of the matters we have been raising consistently is, for example, if we argue that health in counties is mismanaged, why haven't county governments, for example, costed what health requires to run efficiently in their counties? And then when we argue alongside the devolution concept that funds should follow functions, when you have that cost, then you know how to allocate. In management of education, why wouldn't we have a proposal, for example, that when the cost of running public schools efficiently has been determined, then it becomes a provision. For example, like when you're passing budget, that the allocation to, for example, the Minister of Education must be a minimum of this percentage. And so once you have determined that is by law, the education sector is such an important sector that in every budget allocation, the minimum allocated to that particular sector is, for example, let's say 15% of the budget. That will ensure that this debate dies. And